What did we listen to?
Well, Jeff, this is the episode where we jump the shark.
Oh, is that what this is?
For decades, people will be debating whether we were better pre or post Maloney. Fuck, Post Malone.
Wow, you want to try that bit again so you can edit it in, or are you going to leave the mistake?
I'll just edit around it. Look, that was cringe, but it's not as cringe as the line, "I'm calling her Shrek because she's got a donkey." Let's talk about the album Austin. Hi, I'm Chris.
And I'm Jeff, and welcome to the Sound Judgment Podcast,
where every episode we'll be discussing all of the important musical topics, from reviews to which member of Motley Crue is the most vile.
I'm gonna judge the officials. I'm gonna judge all the judges. It's gonna take you people years to recover from all my opinions. You were saying that. I have my notes pulled up. I have that written in all caps. The line, "I'm calling her Shrek because he's got a donkey." Anyway, we listened to Austin by Post Malone. Chris, I'm gonna ask my usual question, although I know the answer is what do you have any history with Post Malone?
Jeff, I think you've been there for every moment of my history on Post Malone.
That's kind of what I figured. I'm assuming you've never listened to him outside of, like, I had him on in my car or whatever.
Okay, my initial thoughts on him were that I hate his face tattoos, and I also kind of hate his face. And I heard the phrase mumble rap and I wasn't interested, but, I believe in forgiveness, so he's since won me over in, like, a very specific way, which is not necessarily through his music. He just seems like a really nice guy.
Yeah,
and
he does.
Yeah, I mean, anytime I hear him talk or anything, I'm just like, he seems cool. The first time I actually heard any music was, that I was aware of at least, was when we were actually both at a New Year's get-together and he was doing the New Year's show. Which, like, isn't ideal circumstances to hear someone for the first time, but, like, that's fine.
I did not realize that was, like, your actual introduction to his music. Oh, that's hysterical.
I hadn't listened to him, and the only thing I was really thinking then was, he's not really mumbling.
No, he's not. He definitely was, like, on the edge of that whole mumble rap thing, but I do kind of think he's one of the exceptions. He wasn't one of the rule, you know what I mean? Which, I mean, in all fairness, there were a lot of exceptions, like there always is.
I mean, since then, I've heard him, like, in movies. I've heard his songs, like, on soundtracks for movies and stuff. I heard his song with Ozzy. He did a song for Spider-Verse. He did that version of I Only Want to Be With You. And he did that Nirvana cover stream that I watched, which was actually really good.
Yeah, I remember that. That was actually a really interesting time. It was just a live stream of him and a band doing a bunch of Nirvana covers because he can and because he likes it. It was interesting time.
And it was a fundraiser for COVID relief.
Yeah, it was a very, very cool thing.
And I'll just drop this. I also watched a Tiny Desk concert that, like, just dropped yesterday, and I sent it to you.
You did. I have not watched it, though, actually. I haven't really had the moment to really sit down and watch it. So I have no clue what he performed or in what manner.
Oh, it's actually pretty cool. His voice is a little rough, which he says is because he's on tour, which is not, like, a great sign. Like, your voice shouldn't be cracking just because you're on tour, I don't think. Like, I know it's additional stress, but as a professional musician, that sounds like bad voice care.
Well, it may be a bit, but I mean, there's also the fact of just, like, I mean, I don't know. I could go on forever, and I'm sure I have previously, about, like, touring schedules for modern musicians is really not what I think anyone should do. Right? It's, even when you have something like a touring Broadway play, you're not the only person singing for 2 hours straight. You'll have bits and pieces and songs here, but then you'll have, like, moments in between, and we're not meant to do this.
Right. I understand that.
That being said, he's not a phenomenal singer.
No.
I'm sure he's a little rough because, like, he's not a flawless singer by any stretch. I think he has a decent voice.
He's a decent singer.
He has a better voice than I think people would expect if you just saw a picture of him and were like, yeah, he's one of the mumble rap guys.
Yeah. I can agree with that.
But I don't think he's ever pretending that, like, he's not some phenomenal singer. He's serviceable. He does fine.
And then you had me listen to Hollywood's Bleeding once during pandemic. I thought it was alright. Didn't really go back to it. It's not my thing, but it's not bad. It's like none of it's terrible, but The interesting thing is, I would say a lot of his music is right on the verge of me liking it.
Interesting. Okay, I can see that though. Yeah, Hollywood's Bleeding I think is a phenomenal album. That was 2019. It had to have been. That was one of my top albums of that year. It's just such an interesting album, I think.
I also want to, real quick, I want to say I like this album cover because it's just kind of Post Malone looking sad but also wealthy on the edge of the pool. And the general idea of the lyrics on this album is that even though he's wealthy, he's also sad.
The album pretty much comes down to, like, I'm rich, I'm famous, but
nothing makes me happy.
But like that's not perfect, and there's a lot still wrong, and
yeah,
and it's interesting. So we're gonna get into that. Just a quick summary of like how we got here. Post Malone had 2 albums that I really would say were more in the mumble rap realm, and that was Stoney and then Beer Bongs and Bentleys. They were very much more what I would expect. Now I was still a little surprised. Like when I first heard the song Rockstar, if you happen to know it, obviously not the Nickelback one, it is exactly what I thought Post Malone would sound like. When I heard a song called Psycho, I was a little taken back. It was a lot more like chill and mellow, I guess, than I thought he would do.
Right.
I thought he put on a little more of a persona of being tough, and he really doesn't. He's pretty open about the fact that he's not a tough guy.
Our boy's a nerd. He likes magic, he likes Pokemon, and he's cool. He seems like a cool guy.
And more, he's kind of like being honest about that. More and more, he's also straying a bit his roots, so to speak.
Yes.
He's trying to become almost like a singer-songwriter thing.
Yeah.
But like this album, if it were you could take this album and minus other things, which I'll get to in a moment, you could take this album, re-record it by insert country folk Americana artist here, and it would make sense for the most part.
Some of it, yeah.
Now, production-wise, this is a pop album.
Yes.
It is glistening and sparkly, and he's drenched in reverb, because, again, he doesn't actually have a great voice. He has a fine voice.
Our boy sounds like he's in a tunnel.
But he always sounds like he's not actually a person.
Yeah.
That's just... But at the same time, neither did Ozzy Osbourne. They put those, that rotary effect and whatever on his voice for half of the stuff he ever did.
Right.
And none of us complained about it. There is, like, I swear to God, again, I'm sure someone has just, like, a plug-in that is the Post Malone effect. And you can record your voice and hit turn on, and it adds all of the effects that he seems to use all the time. He has a very specific sound on his voice.
Yeah.
But here's the thing about Post Malone, and I am for the most part, I'm a moderate Post Malone fan. I really enjoy a lot of what he does, but he has random lyrics which are very childish.
I have so many notes.
Juvenile, or maybe just awkward, and he does, and it's like you could have a song that is almost perfect, and it will have one line that just kind of makes me go like, why did you do this? For example, song is called Something Real. Like, this is such a cool song. It is this big, powerful, bombastic song.
Can I just read my note real quick?
Yeah, go for it. Please do. I hope you quote the same thing I do.
So I can get behind... I did like some of his lyrics. I can get behind a line like light a cigarette just so I can breathe whiskey lullaby to fall asleep, that kind of thing. I like that this is... I don't know what he's been doing aside from it, but it seemed more personal than Hollywood's Bleeding, at least.
Yes, absolutely.
But then he'll write a line like, I pummel the coochie, I'm Bobby Boucher, which I've seen The Waterboy. I don't think Post understands the character.
I'm gonna be honest, I didn't know who that was, so I'm glad you explained that line to me, actually.
That's Adam Sandler in The Waterboy, man. I don't think he was pummeling a lot of coochie.
No, he sure didn't. So meanwhile, the line I was more concerned with would be Prada on my dick, Prada on my sleeves. I'm not really sure what that means. I could let it go, I think, maybe, if it weren't for the fact that it's followed up with "Play that pussy like it's for Elise." Which I don't really know what to make of this.
Art!
I guess that's supposed to be a good thing. I don't know who I should ask if that would be a good thing. Because I feel like just sending a text message to someone saying, hey, if someone played your pussy like it's for Elise, is that a good thing? Would that be good? I don't know what to do with this.
Look, you don't have to send a text. I know one person who, even before this album, would be pro Post Malone playing their pussy like for Release. I don't even think I have to say a name.
No, I know exactly who you're talking about. It
sounds exactly like something they would say without any Post Malone inspiration.
I mean, it absolutely is, because if we're thinking of the same person, I just had dinner with them the other night.
Yeah, they dressed as Post Malone for Halloween once. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, we have a friend who, absolutely, that is the kind of thing she would say. She's also just a lot more crude than I typically am, so... But that's sort of the thing.
But okay, so that said, I just want to go back a track real quick. He opens the album with like a moody, emotional acoustic guitar song called Don't Understand, where I think that the lyrics are really good, and I was invested when this song started. And then the second song starts, and it becomes more what I expect from a Post Malone album.
Mm-hmm.
Where, I guess he, like you said, he moved away from like the trap rap style he was doing.
It's a little less, it's less
more
trappy, yeah.
It's more typical pop, and it's more like a sung rap. But it also sounds like almost every other pop album that's ever come out, which is a little disappointing to me, especially when I do like some of the lyrics.
And again, some of that just comes with the genre. I mean, he is ultimately very much a pop artist.
Right.
It is going to have modern pop production.
Yeah.
That's just the fact of what it is. I've been saying for a handful of years now, there's a video of Post Malone at Norman's Rare Guitars, and this is the video that made me realize, like, this guy might be a little more than I think he is. He was sort of showing that he has an appreciation for like a lot of like old blues.
Yeah.
And even this is I probably saw this video in 2018, 2019. I thought, like, I want like a Delta blues Post Malone album. But even if he did that, it would still end up being produced in a very modern pop way.
Yeah.
Right? Like, the music, the notes that are coming out might say blues, but the production is always just gonna say pop.
Well,
because that's who he is.
That opener, that Don't Understand, I mean, it's overproduced, and it's like, you know, it does its thing, but it also, like, doesn't get in the way of it being one of the only more intimate sounding songs on the album.
No, absolutely not. I'm gonna move on. We're gonna let's call out the lyric that we both started with. It's in a song called Socialite. I'm calling her Shrek because she got a donkey. I am assuming, and again, we can thank the same friend of ours that we were referencing before, that donkey is referring to she has a big ass. Would that be right? I'm assuming.
I'm assuming it's like a play on badonkadonk,
or it's a play on, you know, another
like
word for a donkey is another word for donkey is ass.
That too.
This is not a line I think I would have understood. I would have had to take a minute, but either way, it's a really dumb line. And here's the thing. No matter how much Posty tries to stray from his mumble rap roots, so to speak, right? He makes it apparent that he still has that hip hop quirk in him.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying this as like a ooh, rap is crap kind of thing. I'm saying this in there is, without a doubt, there is like this like cliche, this trope in a lot of modern hip hop where you have these quote unquote funny lines, and they're frequently in the call me blank cuz I'm so blank format, right?
Yeah.
And it's always just some really dumb pun or some innuendo. And I cannot express how much I don't find this funny or interesting. I think it is such an annoyingly childish format that every time I hear anything that falls into this, I'm just like, I'm checked out. Like, Socialite might have been a good song, but I totally checked out with how stupid the line, I'm calling her Shrek because she got a donk.
And that's another one of the songs where it starts off kind of singer-songwritery, and I had, maybe like a couple of hopes for it, and then he says some dumb shit, and I'm just like taken out of it.
That's kind of exactly my biggest issue in general. Is, again, I think I said this at the beginning, is like, he might have what's a really, really good song, but he'll say one or two really dumb lines, and then you kind of lose me. Which I realize is fully on me, but what can you do?
Then there's songs like Landmine, where I think Post Malone must be adhering to the more is more philosophy on production.
Yeah.
This was another one where it was like almost kind of intimate, but then like he drenches it in reverb and he brings in like a church choir or whatever the fuck's going on. And there's a lot of songs that are like that. I mean, Green Thumb is like almost a kind of sad, cute song about a guy who's like can't get over a girl until he mentions that he's about to get married.
Yeah. Yeah. There's. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So I want to know, because the song that stood out.
All of Too Cool to Die is the worst song on the album.
Too Cool to Die. All right. I don't know if I'd say it's the worst song.
The chorus is kind of catchy, but lyrically it's like it's dumb, bad, and also stupid. Okay.
What do you think of the song Morning? And we're spelling it Mourning. Do you have any thought? This is probably the one that stood out to me the most.
I actually kind of liked it.
Okay. I didn't say it stood out in a bad way necessarily, but it did stand out to me the most. I am so torn on this song. It probably has the catchiest damn chorus on the album. Like, I'm totally on board with the sound of this.
Yeah.
But it was also the first song, so the chorus goes, "Don't wanna sober up. The sun is killing my buzz. That's why they call it morning."
I'm a thumbs up that line.
That is a clever line.
Okay, go ahead.
But I'm kind of torn because at the same time, I feel like it's one of those ones that's not... How do I want to say this? It's not... I feel like he's almost pulling a Nikki Sixx on us. Right? He's not blatantly romanticizing alcohol abuse.
Oh, yeah.
But, like, it's kind of there.
Yeah.
I can totally hear this song being sung by someone a little too young to really understand what it's about, but old enough to know what the words mean. Which, I mean, obviously that's not necessarily Post Malone's fault. Like, he's not writing this song for someone who's 13. He's writing it for him and for people who understand it. But, as we have discussed before, you don't choose who your fans are. He absolutely has fans who are well too young to really understand his music. That's mostly on parents. It doesn't change the fact that I'm so torn on this song. I cannot decide if I love it. I can't decide if this is the best song on the album, or if it just makes me feel slightly uncomfortable. Not a ton, but just enough that it bothers me personally.
Okay, so I kind of like it, right? I think that when it comes to the chorus and the song, context with the verses is everything, because all of them are about like being rich and depressed. Also, things like I called my quote unquote friends. Do you got plans? Turns out everyone's free when the dinner is. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
And if what I read is correct, this is like an album that was also partially a part of him sobering up. Like he was sobering up as, and I see this as sort of like an exorcising that demon kind of song, maybe.
Yeah. Again, I'm not saying it's necessarily. I'm not saying it's blatantly bad. And I'm not blaming anybody.
Yeah.
There's just this is purely on me. Like this is a personal issue that I'm kind of fighting with myself with. Like, do I love this song or does it make me feel something a little off? And I can't quite decide. The
line that got me kind of like not sure if I liked it or not was got a lot of shit to say, couldn't fit it in the chorus, which is kind of a weird way to transition into the verse. But after the third listen, I kind of came around to it.
All right, I can fully fully get that.
Because here's the thing, Jeff. I didn't hate this album.
Okay, cool. I mean, hey, mission accomplished, I suppose.
I would say that I could make a playlist of songs from this album that I like better than this complete album. I think that at 17 or 18, depending on the bonus or not tracks, is a little bit overstaying its welcome. But again, for the most part, everything that's on here is listenable until he says some dumb shit.
Until he says a stupid line,
yeah.
Which is so infuriating because some of these songs I think are great until they're brought down to good. Because he makes a dumb
another fucking
reference to Shrek.
Another thing that's like a rap and pop staple line that I fucking hate is when someone says "let's make a baby."
Yeah,
I hate that as a line.
Yeah. That's in fact, as a general rule, let's stop alluding to having sex by referencing the pregnancy outcome, okay? Like let's stop using the phrase "we're trying for a kid." All right? Let's stop all of this. Let's stop all of these weird references, okay? If it's something, how do I want to say this? If you wouldn't sit at Thanksgiving dinner with your grandma and say, "We raw dog it every night," then you should also stop saying "we're trying for a kid." Okay? Deal? So in turn, we should also probably stop using phrases like "let's make a baby." All right? Like we have other ways to say this. I don't give a shit if you go back to the 40s and you say "let's make whoopee." Literally anything. Quit using the child outcome as your way of phrasing this any differently.
Unless you are literally in a relationship and you are having trouble producing a child, don't say it.
Yeah, it's just so... I don't know, man. It's just awkward. There's other ways to say some of these things, and I feel like you're not making any better.
I'll give him a praise now. I appreciate that Post Malone is bold enough to get engaged on the second date.
I mean...
Okay, enough poking fun at his lyrics. I'll say that there's probably, I don't know, 3 or 4 different kinds of song on this album that I could sum everything up with, Jeff. There's like,
yeah, go for it.
You got your almost emotional singer-songwriter song that is going to like turn into a big pop song in the middle and then maybe go back to acoustic near the end.
Yeah.
You got your sad pop with sad lyrics. You got your happy pop with sad lyrics.
Yeah.
And then you have a few that like do this retro 80s dance style that I bet you love. There's
yes
good and bad.
No.
There's Sign Me Up, which is great, and then there's Speedometer,
okay,
which says "let's make a baby tonight," and I turn it off.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Speedometer is definitely a song that I will probably not go back to. I could not imagine it. Sign Me Up is a really fun song. It's definitely this like retro 80s dance pop thing going on. For some reason, however, Sign Me Up really pulls out one thing about Post Malone that I can't say bothers me, but it kind of pulls me out of the zone periodically. And that is that he has this really shrill vibrato.
Yeah.
Like, it's worse than mine, and I think I sound like a sheep. So, and it's, I don't know what it is. Whenever he's doing his more, like, I'm going to reference songs that you probably don't know nearly as well, but like in the song Psycho, which was one of his earlier really big songs.
Yeah. It's
definitely one of his more like mumble rap, what you probably imagine he sounded like, right?
Yeah.
Between that and Better Now, like songs from the 2018, I think that album is. You hear how awkward his vibrato is, but for some reason it doesn't bother me. I think because I'm being biased here, and in a genre where I'm not expecting great vocals, he's better than I thought he was gonna be. This is fine, and I can brush it off. But when you're putting his voice into like a dance pop thing, where I'm expecting a voice more like, say, like a George Michael's or something.
Right.
His awkward vibrato just stands out to me so much. And I don't know if I hate it just because I don't like his vibrato, or if I hate it because it sounds too much like mine. But either way, it drives me crazy. So Sign Me Up is such a fun song, but it just makes me so hyper aware of who's singing it.
Okay, that's fair.
Like, I don't know if you remember the one line. I even had to look for it exactly this. The one line is, "I'm pretty good at doing what I'm told."
Yeah.
I'm pretty good at doing what I'm told, is what it sounds like to me. Like, that's how I hear it. Told. And I can't unhear it.
That's pretty good.
And again, I think it partially stands out because my natural vibrato does the same thing. Like, I have to be very conscious to not do that. Like, I hate it so much. Man, it's such a fun song, though. I'm not gonna lie. Like, ultimately, I think Sign Me Up is a great song. It is, if I were to make in fact, I feel like maybe I should. If I were to make my Post Malone playlist, take the few tracks off of every album that I like, it's gonna make the cut. It's gonna be in that playlist.
Yeah, I mean, I could see this kind of being like the Halsey album we listened to a couple years ago, where I might come back to a handful of these songs. I'm probably never going to listen through the album again, but there's a couple that I might listen to again.
No. I will probably never put on the album front to back, but I will. I mean, again, like, I will absolutely come back to some of these songs. Some of it is kind of exactly what I expected from him. This is the direction he seems to be going. He's coming a little more straight into pop. He's being a little more honest about who he is.
I'm gonna make a bold statement.
Yeah.
One of these days, Post Malone is going to put out an album that I like. We're not there yet, but it's going to happen.
I think he's heading in that direction, though. Absolutely,
he's going
definitely
to happen.
Evolving in that direction.
Yeah. I won't know what to feel like on that day, but it's coming. Barring him just not having any fucking growth beyond right now, it's coming.
Considering how much he's changed in his less than 10-year-long career, like, as a public figure, I don't think that's going to happen. I really do think he's going to keep changing. He's definitely not afraid of change, which is very, very cool.
Do you have any more thoughts on this album specifically?
No, not particularly. Okay. I'm gonna give it another. I'm gonna give it another 4 out of 5. I think this is a really fun album.
Oh wow, you really liked it.
I might be in a good mood now. This is, as always, take these numbers with a grain of salt. I think on some days this might just be a 3 out of 5. I would certainly never give this a 2 out of 5. I had fun with this album.
I am going to 6 out of 10 this album. But even though it's a little bit mid, I want Post Malone to know that I think he's perfectly cool to me. And I would smoke weed and play Magic the Gathering with him.
Alright, valid.
He doesn't have to do anything to be cool to me. He's a cool guy.
No, I think he is a cool guy. Speaking of cool guys, Christopher.
Yeah.
What else have you been listening to?
A lot of cool guys, Jeff. I only listen to cool guys.
I figured. So what have you been listening to?
I have never once been prepared.
Yeah, I don't know why it's like you forget that I'm going to ask you this every time. I'm just baffled by the fact that at no point during preparing your notes do you ever think, like, oh, I should probably, write down what I've been listening to.
Because that's stupid, Jeff. I've been writing down what I've been listening to all through my notes. I've been writing down about Post Malone.
Alright, well, I'm going to cut you off real quick then. Speaking of cool guys, I actually saw on the Power Metal subreddit today that someone posted Lady Beast.
Wow, our homies.
So I was listening to Lady Beast, who are a female-fronted power metal band, actually from our area. In fact, you informed me recently that their lead singer Deb grew up something like maybe 5 miles away from where I did.
Yeah. And it's funny because they're a local band who the musicians lived locally, and the first time I saw them was in Chicago.
Oh, I actually forgot, even though you just told me that not long ago. I actually forgot that. That's awesome. Oh, hey, this band's really cool. Where are you guys from? Pittsburgh. Have you found what you have discovered, Christopher?
One of them's called Kita, which is they do death sludge metal, and I just found them the other day. They were fun. They only have 2 albums. I like when I get to, hear a band before they put out like too much music for me to care about. You fucking got me on a bit of a black metal kick. I've been listening to a bit of Emperor. Did you watch that video I sent you?
Where you referenced, how do you pronounce the singer's name? Isan?
Isan.
Isan. What was the comment? Someone said he looks like like an accounting professor or something.
He looks like a university professor.
And yeah, he sure does. Yeah, he sure
I
does.
cannot believe it. It's so funny. And I saw live music, Jeff, which is always a joy.
Yeah, you did. And I'm drawing... I can picture it. You sent me a picture of the stage, and I'm drawing a blank on who you saw.
Mastodon and Gojira with Lorna Shore opening.
That's right. I didn't know Gojira was part of it. I did know you saw Lorna Shore and Mastodon. Alright, so we've talked before that we should do a re-rundown of Mastodon sometime. Because we both had some pretty...
I had a strong opinion.
Mostly in good fun, but strong negative opinions towards Mastodon.
Yeah.
And you are saying that your opinion of them has been changing.
Yeah. So the first time I saw Mastodon, it probably wasn't a good show or something. I really only knew Blood and Thunder, and they were doing a tour for an album called I Assure You I'm Not Stalling Again.
You're doing a great job tonight.
They were doing a tour for an album called The Hunter, okay? Which has some... We talked about great lyrics tonight, Jeff. I killed a man because he killed my goat. I put my hands around his throat. And just in general, a song called Octopus Has No Friends. But since then, they put out a couple albums that I really like. Once More Around the Sun and Emperor of Sand have some songs that I really like off of it.
Okay.
Also, I went and saw them again, and I have to admit they put on a much better show than they did the first time. Blew it right out of the fucking water.
I'll say, because you said you were not impressed previously.
No. The first time I saw them, I thought they had, like, very little stage presence, very little interaction with each other, with the fans, with anything. They didn't really seem like they wanted to be there very much. Maybe it was a bad time. Maybe they hit us on a bad day. But I gotta say, this time they were much better. Good showmanship. They seemed to, be having a good time. They talked to the crowd a good bit. And they had... The first time I saw them, they just had the album cover on, like, a sign behind them. They had a whole stage set up this time with screens and everything. All three bands used them. But Mastodon probably to the greatest effect. Gojira just kind of did this thing where they had a camera in the audience pointing at the stage, and then they put like Windows effects over, like Windows Media Player effects over the video. It was fun in its own right, but Mastodon really had they had songs with like animated music videos that they were like playing in time with, which is like one of those things where I get really impressed when you can like, oh, they hit that note right on the correct part of the music video. These trained musicians who probably rehearse doing it every night for several weeks, but like I'm still impressed because it doesn't take much to fuck that up.
All right.
And then Gojira, who I don't constantly listen to Gojira, but they always put on a good show when I see them. Like, they're not a band I put on in the car a whole lot, but
they are a band that I, off the top of my head, could not name a single song.
Really?
I have absolutely listened to them, but I do not know anything about them off the top of my head. No.
They put on a pretty good show. If your brother or someone ever drags you to one, it's like a pretty good time. Or, if you end up seeing them open for someone like Lamb of God.
I very seriously, I couldn't even tell you, like, off the top of my head, I couldn't think of what they sound like. I couldn't tell you a single name of a song, even though I know I've listened to them.
They had Flying Whales.
I feel like I need to be a little more conscious about them at some point.
The audience had inflatable whales, Jeff.
Oh. I don't know what to do with that statement.
They have the songs about flying whales. It was actually just two bands yelling at me about whales all night.
They have a song about oh my god, that is something that Mastodon did, didn't it?
Yeah, they have
that whole album about Moby Dick or whatever.
Yeah. So they yelled at me about whales, and then like Gojira's whole thing is like the Save the Whales thing, and they have that song called Flying Whales and all that shit.
Oh, I didn't know they were all Save the Whales. Really?
Yeah. Jeff, one of their album cover from Mars to Sirius, which I'm sure you've seen. It's like the flying whale in front of the planet. That's a play on like the Save the Whales organization logo.
I just found out they're French.
They are French. They were very polite
Right
French
now.
boys.
I just found this out right now. Wow, they are not at all what I thought they were.
No.
Oh, that's strange.
No,
Okay.
they're like humanitarian gent.
I might have to give them a shot. We'll see. We'll see. Interesting.
I'm here to add depth to the things you thought you hated.
I didn't say I think I hated it. I just didn't really have any thoughts on them, other than just like I'm aware they exist. That's kind of the extent of my knowledge of Gojira, is that they exist.
They do in fact exist.
Huh. Well, that's weird. Why would they do that?
What?
Exist.
Oh, well, everyone's got to do it sometime, I guess.
Interesting. Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. So what else? Up to anything else? Up to anything else interesting lately?
The most interesting thing that I'm up to is passing it on to you. What have you been listening to?
Well done. Well done.
I still got it.
Yeah, sure. Let's call it that. Well, I mean, as you kind of referenced, I am definitely still like mixing in a decent amount of black metal into my listening because we are entering the spooky season.
The most wonderful time of the year.
Also, just the other day was the 30th anniversary of Oystein Arseth's murder, or the time that the one member of the band Mayhem murdered another member of the band.
How many videos did you have to listen to get the pronunciation correct?
I'm still not sure if I'm saying that right, because I have heard so many non-Norwegian people pronounce it is the problem.
Oh no.
And the only times I can find it said by Norwegian people, I'm like, I'm not sure if I'm hearing this right. So like, it's purely a guess, to be honest with you. But that is the best you're going to get out of me. As I have said before, I'm not always great with names.
I was sold. I believed you.
I was actually listening to a decent amount of Mayhem, who admittedly I really haven't listened to a ton of previously, because I try to avoid anything Varg has ever touched.
What did you think of it?
So, admittedly, I was only listening to early Mayhem. I know they still exist, and I have not dug into anything else.
But you listened to... Did you listen to the album that he's actually on?
De Mysteries Dom
Yes,
Satanus.
that one. Yeah.
Yeah, so I listened to that, and then they have 2 live albums from that era. Live in Zitz and Live in Leipzig. Which are, I mean, it's mostly the same, handful of songs. I think it's cool. I think it is kind of cool to see... I mean, because obviously, like, Mayhem were early in that, the second wave, so to speak, of black metal.
Yeah.
It is very cool to see where the genre was at the time, knowing what it eventually has morphed into, which, let's face it, a lot of the bigger black metal bands are much more symphonic and much more heavily orchestrated. With your DB Borgir, or I always forget how hugely popular they actually are, but Cradle of Filth is, I mean, they're just musically, there's just so much going on. But I mean, not to say that Mayhem's music was simple, because it's not. It's just an interesting thing to see where it started back in the early 90s. So I have been listening to a decent amount of that. You did have me listening to Immortal, who is fine. They're really not standing out to me a whole lot, though.
Okay.
I don't have a whole lot to say about them, unfortunately. I mean, I'm going to continue giving them a shot, but they haven't immediately caught me like, ooh, yeah, here's a thing that I'm into, right?
Well, as long as we're talking about me sending it to you, what did you think of the Emperor song?
I think the song's totally fine. I was just a little more preoccupied at first. I watched it twice. Yeah. I watched it once just like laughing at the fact that I love how these guys look, because they don't look the way I thought they would.
This is further in the career. Earlier on, they did like dress the part a little bit more. Now they don't have to. They have the cred.
That's what I was just going to say, is I love seeing more recent videos of some of these guys when they kind of drop some of the image.
Yeah.
And they just embrace, like, no, this is just the music we make, but like ultimately this is who we are. And man, I'm still having a hard time wrapping my head around like how to take some of these guys. Like how serious are some of them, and I can't always tell.
Mm-hmm.
Like how we were talking about this, Gaul, that's his name, correct?
Right.
Of Gorgoroth. He him and the other guy involved, whose name is slipping me right now, like they don't allow their lyrics written online. Like they have it taken down. Like if you go to dark lyrics and look up Gorgoroth, like the lyrics aren't listed. Like it's just I don't know. That I feel like that's just some next level of self-importance that I'm not really sure I get. And it really paints my enjoyment of the band. Like, I have a hard time listening to Gorgoroth without realizing, like, oh, this is the guy who in that one interview literally sat there swirling his wine for a minute before going, Satan. Like, just... Like, please tell me you're actually a performance artist and this is all a joke. But I don't think it is. I think this dude's serious.
And he's, out of all of them, he's the gay one.
And he's the gay one, which is funny in a genre that is known for some less than stellar ideas of humanity.
Some shitty opinions in that genre.
The fact that anytime I look up a new black metal band, the first thing I do is make sure they're not literal Nazis, you know?
Okay, so, and that kind of brings me to my issue with Mayhem, is that they're not necessarily the worst band in the genre. I shit on them like a bit, and Varg too. And musically, Mayhem isn't bad, and Varg has some pretty good dungeon synth stuff if you're into that. My problem is that even beyond like the shitty things that Varg has said and done, I just think that there's so much attention attracted to them by the history and the murder and stuff that this band wouldn't be considered like the titans of the genre that they are considered without that.
No, if they didn't cause the controversy of being the centerpiece of, like, you know, what, 3 deaths in all, like, if Varg did not get himself involved in Mayhem,
I think even their contemporaries were just doing so much more interesting shit.
Yeah. I think Mayhem would have been relevant.
Yeah, they were obviously relevant early
due to
being involved early on in the scene, but
I don't think they would hold the reputation they have.
Right.
I really do think some of those other very early guys. I mean, like, I always forget, like, Satyricon goes back that far.
Yeah.
Early 90s. Yeah, I really do think there was a lot more interesting music happening either then or, like, within a few years. Like, by the mid-90s, there was a lot more interesting music happening in the genre.
I mean, Bathory was around first, and they're way better.
Oh, Bathory is endlessly more, it's just endlessly a more interesting band. In every way possible, I would say. I mean, like, especially musically. But I also think they were falling into that trap of, like, oh, this is the sound we want. Right. Therefore, everything has to sound like it.
Yeah. I mean, they were being more true than everyone else, but I'm just... Yeah. I don't know. I think that a lot of the praise they get wouldn't exist if not for
it's
the
because
drama.
It's because of the drama. Yeah, exactly. I think a lot of it otherwise would have been just like, oh yeah, they were important at the time, but like we don't really like. It's like comparing the Beatles to Bill Haley in the Comets. Like, Bill Haley and the Comets were extremely popular. They were very relevant. But how many Bill Haley songs do you know versus how many Beatles songs do you know? How many Chuck Berry songs do you know, right? They were important. They were relevant at the time. They are more than a footnote, but they're not the centerpiece. Yeah, so I feel like I want to spend more time learning about this scene, though. Because, I mean, I think so much of the scene was so ridiculous at the time. I feel like this is one of those ones, like, I wouldn't mind doing a deep dive in reading, you know, like, I know Lords of Chaos is a famous book about the Norwegian black metal scene at the time. I would love to find a couple books and maybe dig into it more.
Yeah, it's actually a pretty interesting scene.
Yeah, it absolutely is. There were definitely some personalities.
Are we wrapping it up then?
I can wrap this up whenever you are ready, Chris.
Well, Jeff, it's been a productive episode. We learned a lot this week, actually. We learned that Bobby Boucher pummels pussy. We learned that Post Malone is into Kinky Kelly and the Sexy Stud. I can do movie references too, Jeff. I got movie references. We learned that, Jeff, hurry up and ask me if we're done.
Are we done, Chris?
That's it.